Whitehorse District Council's Cabinet meeting today, the 19th of April. We're here in Abbey House. And we go straight on to the first item, which is Chair's announcement. Now, I know you always do the evacuation.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. So for benefit of members and officers and public in the room, in the case of a fire evacuation emergency alarm, leaves this room, turn right into the corridor and out through the fire exit, which is behind that wall.
Thank you very much. Now, more importantly than that, if there can be something more important than an emergency exit, I would like to draw attention to the fact that this is Steve's very last meeting, I believe, in our cabinet. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Personal thank you, and as well as a collective thank you for everything that you have done for me as chair of the cabinet and our cabinets, present and past. You have been a rock, and I wouldn't have been able to do this without you. So wish you thank you for everything you've done, and wish you all the best for your retirement.
Thank you very much, Chair.
So moving on, can we have apologies for absence and a roll call, Steve?
Thank you, Chair. So if I'll read out cabinet members' names in alphabetical order. If you confirm, please, whether you are in the room or present online. Councillor Sue Call.
Present in the room.
Councillor Mark Coleman.
Present in the room.
Councillor Andy Crawford.
Here in the room.
Councillor Lucy Edwards.
Here in the room.
And Neil Fawcett.
Here in body.
Diane Lagova.
Muted.
On mute.
I'm attending online, joined online. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Helen Pickhills.
Yeah, I'm online and I'll try to get to the end of the meeting. It's still be here, but apologies for not being in the room with you.
And Councillor Bethia Thomas.
I'm present in the room.
Thank you.
So moving swiftly on. I was going to say that's a missed.
Councillor Andy Fulton present in the room.
I came around a bit too quickly. So can we go straight on to minutes now? I'm assuming everybody has had a chance to read through last meeting's minutes, and is everybody content to sign those off and agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, declarations of interest. Now, I believe we do have something that could be considered declaration of interest for item number 13. Thank you. The housing enforcement policy. I would hand it over to one of the officers to explain, and just to make sure that we're clear.
Yeah, Chair. If members have a property in the Vale that they rent out to other people, then they need to declare an interest in that before we debate this item, and they would ideally should be leaving the room during that item because they would have a conflict with setting the policy. So you can think about that and declare when we come to that item, I think.
Can I just qualify if it's a prop only in the Vale?
Only in the Vale,
Okay,
because the policy applies to the Vale.
Thank you very much, Steve. Let's keep that in mind when we get to that item and declare interest if needed. Any other declarations of interest on any other items? Urgent business. Already gone through the emergency exits and your news, Steve. So, is there any other urgent business? I can't think of any. Thank you. And then we get on to public participation. And we have several public speakers registered.
We do, Chair. Yeah, so the first public speaker we have is Mr. Raleigh Hullock. And Mr. Hullock, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Welcome, Mr. Hullock.
You have up to 3 minutes. You have up to 3 minutes, Mr. Hullock.
Yeah, before I start, I would like to ask a question of the Cabinet. What is your understanding of the word consultation?
This is your opportunity to speak.
I'm asking a question before. I'm asking a question before I do this. I want the Cabinet's understanding of the word consultation. It is important.
Thank you for your question. We weren't expecting it. We were expecting you to speak, but we will provide an answer, written answer in due course. I'd encourage you to speak your piece now.
Right, okay, well, obviously you're not prepared to answer it straight away. My understanding of consultation is to discuss, communicate, negotiate. We approached licensing when they introduced the tariffs in 22. They were imposed on us. The committee instructed licensing to come back to us to discuss the review of it, which was to take place on January the 23rd. It didn't happen. We, as an association, had to come to the council committee again, saying, please, no communication has been had, no consultation. We then had a notification that there was going to be a meeting regarding the tariffs, and this took place in January. We were expecting to be able to speak to licensing and discuss and work out a tariff that would be acceptable to the association and the trade. When we spoke to them in January, they turned around and said, you are going to have this thing. There was no consultation, no discussion. You are being told, which is again against what the Cabinet had told them. The Cabinet told them, have a consultation, talk to the trade. They didn't, they just told us. We have no option. We then went and spoke to the trade and have put together a tariff which we think is acceptable. They say, oh, well, we've done it through the Guildford formula. We, in 2 years ago, when we had that set up, we were asked for the Guildford tariff, not the Guildford formula, the Guildford tariff. They've given us a tariff which is less than the Guildford tariff. We are fighting against all the inflation that's going on. Minimum earnings has gone up since 2014 to the current by over 70%, and in the last 2 years it's gone up by 20%. How are we supposed to pay our employees when we can't earn the money? Therefore, the hackney carriages are not going out on the road. The ones that have the licenses are working for big private hire companies, so they're not going to respond. They didn't bother. They don't need to. They get paid by them. We are up against it, and we're asking for the Cabinet's help. There was an occasion where a customer wanted a taxi from Wallingford to Wantage. As a hackney driver, we would have charged £46. Go Green, we're going to charge £88. So where is the protection for the general public that they don't get mullered by other private hire companies? It's not happening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hallett.
We're just asking you to support the trade and give us the tariff that we've put to you, because we see that it's fair. We need to be able to earn the sufficient to be able to provide the service, or you will lose it. You will totally and utterly lose it. I'm sorry to be so angry, but I have to put it across. It's that important.
Thank you, Mr. Hollick. We do appreciate you taking the time to speak to us, and I'm sure your thoughts will be taken into consideration when we get to the item where we make the decision on this. Thank you.
The next speaker chair is Mr. Jason Atherton, who's present in the room. Mr. Atherton, you have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I will try to stay calm after last night's self-visit. Yeah, Riley's talked to you about consultation. You're going to be told by licensing how they had consulted with us. We had a meeting where they told us this is what we've decided the tariff that will be consulted on. That's the point where I'm in. We should have been making that decision. We're the businesses, we're the people who are, I have already pre-prepped my staff, and I will say this openly. If I don't get the £3.50 that we've asked for as a trade, I will be telling my staff today I can no longer employ them. I simply cannot, as a business, afford to employ people if I can't pass the cost on. The numbers that Riley tells you, 71% increase in minimum wage in the last 10 years. I already paid my staff 9.8% pay rise last April, another 9.6% this year, because the government forces me to do so. And I've not been able to pass a single penny of that cost, like any other business would, onto my customer. We've had increases in our licence fee, £120 for an environmentally friendly vehicle, now £358. The council licensing removed the discount for environmentally friendly in a Lib Dem council. Come on. They want us to go electric at £50,000 a car. Where are we going to earn the money to buy those vehicles? So 200% increase in my licence fee. We've had 17.5%. Now, I've been fighting for the taxi trade for 20 years. Neil Fawcett knows I went to great lengths to try and contact our MP during COVID to try and get support with zero effect. Andy Crawford, you know, I've been fighting for the Wantage boys over the rank. Wantage Town Council have done nothing. They're trying to get through the back door, something they shouldn't be doing. There's no support for our trade. And if there's no financial support for us, as Riley said, we can't stay. I cannot. I'm 25 years plus now. I've been running our family business. 25 years before that, my father. And apparently, licensing, etc. I'm sure you've all got vast experience of running a taxi business. Tell me that I don't know what it is costing to run my business. I can't afford to pay £40,000 to replace my cars. I can't afford 60 plus to replace my minibus. I've got vehicles breaking down on a regular basis. I simply can't afford to replace them. I can't afford to pay my staff. I can't produce you a report, the licensing report, hours and weeks, probably weeks of work to produce you the report. I get 3 minutes to tell you. So I don't know what to say anymore, but I do know this. If we get this goes through and you say £3 up, I literally now have to go back to my office and make a decision. I can no longer afford to run my business. I can't afford to employ. Those staff will all lose their holiday entitlement. They'll have to go self-employed to remain. And that includes 2 of my own children. I've got to tell 2 of my children today, very likely, if the decision doesn't go what we need, that I can't employ them anymore. Yeah, I've had 2 hours sleep last night, 2 hours. I have an ICD in my chest. I'm supposed to be less stressed. I can't do this. I can't. And it is not the council's job to put me out of business. It's a maximum tariff. We can charge less. So we have this absolute fixation with where we sit in the league tables. I left here last night angry. I went to the motorcycle shops because they had a bike meet. I like my bikes. Burnout Barbecue. They've got a license from the council to sell food. £14 for a portion of chips, for a bit of beef brisket on the top of a can of Coke. The driver that I was with this morning went to the show at Dalton Barracks on Saturday. £7 each for a kid's hot dog, £9.50 for his hot dog. All got licenses from the council to sell that food, but not once does the council dictate them how much you should pay for a bloody hot dog. How can you have to pay £9.50 for a hot dog and someone tells me I can't charge £6 for a taxi? It costs me 40, 50 grand to put a vehicle on. It costs £1.50 to put that hot dog in a roll. But this same licensing department gives the license to those people to sell. We are the only trade that you tell us what we can earn, and you are, as a council, not individually, I don't hold anyone, will put me out of business. I cannot pay what the government forces me. My own, we all know, council tax in this period has gone up by over 40%. The taxi price has gone up by 17.5.
Sorry, I think we're really deviating from what we.
I don't know what to say anymore. I'm trying to appeal to you as human beings. I will be out of business if I can't pass my charges on. That is, anyone who's got any involvement or knowledge of business knows. Any business cost goes to the customer, but not if you're a taxi business.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, the next speaker is Councillor Catherine Foxall, speaking as a ward member on the housing enforcement policy. Councillor Foxall, you have up to 3 minutes.
Just asked her to confirm she doesn't own a rental property, please.
Councillor Foxall, can you confirm, do you own a rental property in the Vale district?
No, I don't.
You don't. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. That's fine. Thank you, Councillor Foxall.
No, that's all right. I'm happy not to declare that kind of interest. Thank you for letting me speak this morning, Cabinet. It's good to see you all. Just to confirm, I'm speaking in my capacity as ward member for Watchfield and Shrivenham ward. So I really want to start by welcoming this housing enforcement policy that you're looking at under item 13, which I think gives the council a really important tool to support residents better. My request to the Cabinet today is that you work with officers to make a small addition that would strengthen this policy to bring registered providers and housing associations more explicitly into its scope. So the 2021 census shows that 14.3% of Vale households were in rented social housing in 2021. Since my election 11 months ago, problems with rented housing has been the largest source of my casework from residents. These have included tenants with long-term problems with damp and mould that have even led to children being hospitalised with asthma. And these are from poor construction standards and also include vermin resulting from inadequate waste collections on managed estates. And I really want to acknowledge as well the huge amount of work that officers are putting into each of these cases to try and get residents' living conditions improved. I understand, and I'm not surprised, that our private sector housing team are now seeing around half of their service requests coming from social housing tenants. And I also understand that officers are finding it more difficult to engage with some housing associations. And it's been very striking to me that the residents asking for support are often in modern properties on the newest developments. So I do not think that our major problem are the bad apples, small operators, unregulated rogue landlords and letting agents. Our problem is residents who are being failed unacceptably by a system of contracted out property management, which is employed by the large-scale registered providers of social housing, where a failure to build housing correctly and then maintain it is widespread business as usual. So I think if we make explicit that our policy applies to housing associations and registered providers just as much as private landlords, I think this policy would be much strengthened. And I think that can be done very simply, and it would bring it into line with other local authority policies, which already give a range of approaches and wordings to making this clear. I've got a number of examples and links that I could send officers and Cabinet members if that would be helpful. But I think there's a couple of examples where district councils make it really clear that their policies do apply to social housing providers, but also help explain to tenants that the system for registered providers may be slightly different because of there tends to be kind of managed corporate complaints processes as well as the regulation of the housing ombudsman. But I think by strengthening this policy in such a way, just with a few simple sentences, we can empower residents and ward members, parish councils to understand the different avenues that are open to them to get help, and also empower officers to get that help for their residents. So thank you very much for considering this.
Thank you, Councillor Boxall. Really appreciate you coming here to speak on this. And when we get to the agenda item 13, I think we will comment on your points here then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, the last request to speak at this meeting from other members is Councillor Sarah James, who wishes to talk about the Section 106 funding application at Milton.
Thank you, Councillor James. Please feel free to start speaking.
Thank you. Thank you, Cabinet. Good to see you. So I'm here to talk about item 9, which is a Section 106 funding request towards building a new community and sports facility at Milton Heights, which is in my ward. I'm so pleased to see this application come forward because I'm well aware of the huge amount of effort in the background that has been put in by the parish council, by Milton United Football Club and by other local parishioners to get together this plan that allows them to make the most of the Section 106 money that has been awarded for various large developments at Milton Heights towards providing a community facility and also to replacing the crumbling Milton United Football Club sports pavilion and opening that up to use by other sports clubs. So currently there's no community room of any kind at Milton Heights, and there are a lot of new homes there and a lot of new people, of course. So there were 200 or so homes at Milton Heights, and that has more than doubled and is still growing. with the current developments. Not having a community room, of course, means that no one can do things like set up a parent and toddler group or a knit and natter group or run a fitness class or book a room to host a birthday party. It makes a huge difference to a community and to the opportunities for a community to actually get to know each other. If there's just a space that you can book and use for those kind of events and groups. I'd like to recognise that Milton United Football Club have put a huge amount of effort into this. They're already a really popular and successful community club and run loads and loads of kids football activities. But their building, which is on the site that will be used for this new building, is absolutely on its last legs. It is held together almost by string and tape. This is in a great location. It's really central for Milton Heights. It's in walking distance to all parts of it. The older parts have been there for quite a while and the new parts are being built now, right near the primary school. Planning is under consideration at the moment, and the building is seeking to go beyond building regulations in energy efficiency. And frankly, it would need to be a tent, not to significantly improve on the state of the current building that is there now. So I'd just like to say how pleased I am to see this here, and I really hope that when you get to this item, you'll be giving it your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate you coming to support your community, and I totally agree. Community rooms are vital for particularly smaller parishes. So yeah, thank you. We will probably discuss it further when we get to oh, she's gone. The agenda item. Steve, did you have something to mention?
No, I didn't. My hand raise was.
Yes.
I didn't mean to do that.
Thanks, Sarah. So now we go on. That's all of the public.
Yes.
Yeah. Same as. So we have item number 7 is recommendations and updates from other committees. Now, there are quite a few from scrutiny. It's quite lengthy. And I just wanted to take the time again to say thank you very much, because this is appearing in our agenda. It's thanks to the work of officers and scrutiny and other committees, I'm sure, timing the meeting. So we have proper and due consideration. So I'm assuming that everybody has already seen the recommendations because they are in the full agenda, and hope that you have taken into consideration those recommendations when considering the other items. Specifically, it is the waste vehicles procurement and the garden town that joint scrutiny have commented on. So I propose that we, for the items that are on the agenda, we discuss those at the time of the agenda item. Are there any others? Was there anything?
Yeah, Chair, there was also a meeting of the Joint Audit and Governance Committee on Monday. And just to give you a quick update on what happened there.
Thank you.
They considered an updated code of governance, corporate governance, and have recommended approval of that document to full council, because it becomes part of the constitution once approved. The committee also considered a review of the regulation of investigatory powers that the council has, and has authorised the head of legal and democratic to make any minor amendments to the policy as necessary. The committee also approved the internal audit plan for 2024-25. They received an update on the statement of accounts for 2022-23. They received a report from the new external auditors, Bishop Fleming, who will be doing the audit in 23-24. And Bishop Fleming reported on how they intended to carry out that audit next year, in the forthcoming year. And also the committee looked at the 6-monthly report on the corporate risk review, and also discussed that in confidential session too.
Thank you.
No recommendations from the committee to cabinet.
Did anybody have any questions or clarification on those points? And as I said, we will discuss the recommendations from joint scrutiny as we hit those agenda items. So we're going on to item number 8, the Hackney carriage fares. And I believe Councillor Pighills is able to introduce them. Please say if you're not able. You're okay?
No, I'm fine. Yeah, apologies for not being in the room. Not 100% this morning, but anyway, I should do my best. Our Hackney carriage tariff was last amended with effect from the 1st of October 2022 and has been kept under review since that date. The tariff applies to all journeys carried out by Vale of Whitehorse licensed Hackney carriages within the Vale of Whitehorse district. It is a maximum and drivers can charge a lower fare if they wish. The tariff would not apply where the journey starts in Vale and ends outside the district, or vice versa, provided the driver has agreed a fare with the passenger before the journey starts. However, if they do not do this, then they must charge no more than the tariff. Following the cabinet meeting in September 2023, officers were asked to conduct a formal review using the Guildford method, and this is the report on the outcome of that process. The Guildford method is a nationally recognised method to calculate taxi tariffs, which takes into account a number of different factors, including local average earnings and the costs associated with running a taxi, as shown in the information sheet at Appendix C, which was published on the survey website page as part of the consultation. The report before you details the results of the consultation carried out on the proposed new tariff at Appendix B. This consultation was in addition to the legal requirement for public notice, which was placed in local newspapers between the 31st of January and the 2nd of February 2024. The consultation was primarily via online survey, which was open from the 31st of January to the 19th of February, which was the maximum length of time possible given reporting deadlines and the legislative requirement. Hard copy surveys were provided where requested. Emails were sent to all licensed Hackney carriage proprietors with a link to the survey, and this was followed up with a link within the regular trade newsletter to all licence holders, which was sent on the 12th of February. The consultation was also publicised on social media and in the local press, and the survey link was added to the taxi fares page on our website. In addition, officers provided a drop-in session at the District Community Centre on the 6th of February, where drivers could discuss the tariff before providing their comments, and officers also visited each of the ranks twice in the daytime and evening during the consultation period to answer any questions the trade may have. The consultation report at Appendix D confirms 26 responses were received. Data from the consultation team confirms that 164 of the 206 email recipients, that's 80%, opened the email. And 48, that's 23%, then click through to the survey. Whilst the response rate wasn't high, the majority of people who answered whether they agreed or disagreed with the proposed tariff said they agreed, and some who disagreed said they thought it was too high. Officers emailed the Southern Vale Taxi Driver Association on the 21st of December to confirm that they were preparing for a consultation on a revised tariff calculated using the Guildford method, and requested a meeting in order to provide an update. This meeting was held on the 12th of January, and officers showed them the tariff that had been calculated using the method and informed them of the type of information they should include in their responses to the consultation if they didn't agree with the proposed tariff. The association has proposed an alternative tariff which can be found at Appendix E and some follow-up information at Appendix F. It is explained within the report that there's a need to use median figures to give a typical average as per ONS advice, and that salary data has been taken into account using the model. Paragraph 15 explains that the tariff in Guildford itself is higher, but that there are a number of additional costs incurred by drivers in Guildford, which Vale of Whitehorse drivers do not have. None of those who felt the tariff was too low have provided sufficient information to justify changing the figures generated by using the model. Having reviewed the results of the consultation, officers have incorporated some amendments into the proposed new tariff at Appendix G, which relate to some changes of days and timings proposed by the association. The main aim of the tariff is to ensure that fares charged to the public are fair and reasonable for both passengers and drivers. Adoption of the tariff in Appendix G would place us 13th out of 340 councils in the country, as detailed within the report. Officers are of the view that increasing the tariff any higher than proposed could have an impact on the users that need the service the most, namely those on lower income and those with disabilities. The recommendations are to consider the results of the consultation, adopt the tariff at Appendix G, and confirm use of the Guildford method for future annual reviews. Yeah, that's all really. We have officers online if Cabinet members have any queries about the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pickles. I see Diane. Thank you for joining us, Diane. I also note that Mr. Hullock has his hand up. Mr. Hullock, you have spoken already, so we can't go to you again, I'm afraid.
I
Now,
appreciate that. I'm just here because I would like to be able to answer any questions that you have, because there are so many holes I can put through that, but I'm here. I would like to respond to any questions you have.
thank you, Mr. Hullock. Councillor Paul.
Is Mr. Hullock driving?
I hope he's not driving. I'm assuming he's
He's
parked.
hands-free.
I hope he's parked up.
My view would be
No, I'm
that.
not driving.
All right.
Okay, that's good for clarification. I didn't
That's
think
fine,
didn't think you were, Mr. Hullock. Does anybody have any questions or comments that we need to raise at this point? Councillor Coleman?
Yeah. So thank you to the officers for the report, and also to Councillor Pickles for introducing it. I mean, it strikes me that what we're trying to do is find a balance between well, actually, we're trying to find a fair wage for taxi drivers and businesses, and also ensure that we're being fair to residents. My understanding of the Guildford method is it is a method. It's not a way of comparing and saying this is what happens in Guildford, therefore the same amount of fund cost tariffs would be generated within the Vale. So can I just ask, there is a spreadsheet which I have to confess I'm not fully conversant with, but it does look at things like average wage, cost per mile. Where do those, perhaps this is for Diana, where do those costs come from? Is that something that we generate, or is it an external figure?
So obviously we take the average salary earnings, that's from the Office of National Statistics data, and then the cost of running a diesel car, they're from AA data. That was last produced in 2014. However, that has been adjusted year on year for inflation since then, and it includes things such as depreciation, the capital cost of a vehicle, insurance costs, road tax, breakdown cover, fuel, replacement tyres and labour, all those sort of costs. Then we take the annual cost of our own Hackney carriage licence, insurance costs, which we take from a sample of our drivers. We review their records and take an average figure for those. It then looks at average mileage, which we also take from our local data for Hackney carriages, and then average journey lengths. For those, that was something that was in the consultation. We asked drivers to, we used a figure that other councils use, and we asked for playing the consultation, asked if anybody had any views on that figure. We didn't have any responses, so we took that took the figure that we proposed, and it also takes into account the driver licence fees as well. They're a 3-year fee, so we divide that sort of proportionately. And that includes like the medical costs, the disability and awareness, the safeguarding awareness training, the compliance test for vehicles, all local factors that are relevant to the Vale.
So in sum, then it's a mix of data from ONS, which on national, some from did you say the AA? Was it RAC or AA? But that's
AA.
then been adjusted for inflation,
Yes.
and then some input from the trade here in terms of averages. So that strikes me as being quite a fair way of getting statistics, and to some degree, not to some degree, it is independent of the council, apart from, I guess, licensing fees where we've got those, that will be in. So this is an independent input of data to the calculation using the Guildford model.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Paul.
Yeah, so in terms of what you just talked about there, Diane, about the various different inputs, and specifically I'm just questioning the AA use of the costs of a diesel car and depreciation, etc., etc. Is it not the case with certainly vehicles that are used in taxi firms, back cabs and hackneys and stuff, that they are actually going to be used a lot in a very, very different way to just the standard diesel car? Has that been taken into account?
Yes. Yes, there's a factor that's applied to the calculation to take into account. Yeah, the fact that vehicles obviously do different journeys and more mileage than a sort of regular non-taxi.
Indeed, and obviously the lifespan of the vehicles would also be extended beyond the normal use of so how exactly would that have been taken into account then?
There's a formula that basically it's called the Guildford model because it was devised by Guildford Borough Council, and there's basically a formula that we use to input various figures into to get the relevant information. The calculator itself has been through, the Guildford model itself has been through a judicial review process, and it was found to be a fair way to calculate hackney fees. Hackney fares, sorry.
Just so I'm clear, so the AA data that you would have put in as regards a diesel car and the kind of average mileage, etc., there is an additional formula been applied to that to actually take into account the usage and age and various different other factors that would be surrounding a hackney vehicle rather than just a standard diesel car.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, it is, yes.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you, Councillor Cole. I think one of the main issues here that is under question is this idea of the consultation not being correctly done. But from what Councillor Pighills has described, I feel that officers have done a very good job of consulting, and it might be a confusion over what a consultation is. And did anybody have any comments on that? And I include officers in this, Councillor.
Yeah.
Coleman.
So I look in the report that I'm referring to Para 8. It talks about the number of emails that were sent out, 206, 80% of those being open, 48% clicked through to the survey, and 26 survey responses. So my understanding of what is the legal requirement for this is to put in the local media for a period of a minimum of, I think, 2 weeks, the proposed tariff, which then enables the trade and I guess the public as well, actually, to comment on, one way or another. I think sending out the emails here, I'm suggesting actually is over and above what is required. And the figures suggest, 80% of the emails being open suggests to me that people have engaged with that. They've chosen whether they're going to do the survey or not, but that's their choice. But they have received an email. And I think additionally, I think this came up in the cabinet briefing. Am I right in saying that officers walked the taxi ranks to talk to the drivers and advise them that this process was in? So it wasn't as if they had to be relying on seeing an email to advise them or reading the paper. Actually, we've made effort to talk to the drivers I don't mean me, I didn't. The officers, went out and tried to talk to the drivers on the taxi ranks. So can I just ask, I think it's probably for Diana, is all of what I've just described there correct, or have I misunderstood any of that?
No, that's a very good, good summary. Thank you.
Okay, so my interpretation of consultation, I know Mr. Hull asked the question at the beginning, he will get a written response on that. But I, by whatever definition I would deem it to be, that does sound to me like we have it done due diligence in terms of consulting as best we can. So I think I'm quite comfortable that we've consulted, or at least given people the opportunity to comment on the proposed tariff, which, going back to the point that I asked about, where do those figures come from? There is an independence assessment using a model that's actually quite transparent. So I'm feeling, although it's not it hasn't generated the tariff that the trade would like, and I accept that. Please. Yeah, I accept that. However, it is I believe, and I think it went to court from the Guildford model initially, it is an independent, transparent method of assessing a fair tariff.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. And just for my understanding as well, so I appreciate what's been said about how many how officers have gone out and tried to reach out as much as possible. And from what, again, Councillor Pickhill suggested, I'm not sure if it was the majority of people came back, or it was a minority, I can't remember on the exact figures, but also it was a suggestion that Councillor Pickhill said that the majority of those who responded were in agreement. Is that correct? But they could have had the opportunity to comment there. And I just want to make this completely clear, because I don't want us to be making a decision on this without the absolute facts of what came back to us from the consultation. Diane, could you possibly comment? I hope you understood my meaning. It's like I'm just trying to just really drill down, make sure that the number that came back to us from Vale specifically, and what the figures were in terms of response.
Yes, so 23% of them, of respondents, of all licence holders, responded to the survey. And for the question that we asked whether people agreed with the tariff, the majority of them said they did agree. And out of some of those who disagreed, some of them did so because they thought the tariff was actually too high. I don't know if Laura's got access to, I was
going to say, I've got the consultation report open, if that specific appendix. So 38% agreed, which was a split of 23% strongly agreeing and 15% agreeing. And as Diane said, there were people who did disagree with the tariff. I'd have to go through and double check exactly how many it was that said it was too high, but there were a number who said it was too high. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it did. Thank you. And apologies, I didn't express it very well. Does anybody, I don't know who put their hand up first. Councillor Fawcett was the person I saw first, and then Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, on that, we are in a position where we've got a set of figures from the consultation process, which is out of line with the representations we've had in person. And that, I think, at the very least, does raise a question mark, about where the view actually is. But as our officers have just said, from the numbers are small, so the ones who answered that question, 6 responses strongly agreed, 4 agreed, 2 disagreed, 5 strongly disagreed, and 9 didn't answer. And that's quite a small, it's quite a small sample. And obviously we've heard from 2 people today, I'm guessing, and probably presumably in the strongly disagree group. I did have a question though, which is obviously that one of the concerns that's been raised, which I think is one we have to think about, is the impact on the trade, and whether there are some operators or a lot of operators who are very much on the on the margins of being viable or not. So I wanted to ask, do we know what the direction is in terms of are we losing licensed hackney carriages in the Vale? Is there an increase in the number of individuals who are self-employed running cabs rather than licensed hackney carriages? What are the trends, and is the trend in the number of licenses the same thing as the number of that are actually operating, and do we have any figures on that?
That's a good question, thank you. Diane, do you have any figures on that?
Yes. So when the current tariff was introduced in the Vale, we had 254 hackney carriages, and as currently we now have 281. So there has been an increase since over sort of that 18-month period. And with private hire vehicles, they've remained relatively stable. We did have 74 18 months ago, and now we've got 77. So there has been an increase in private hire vehicles over the last sort of 18 months. And we're finding the same with driver licenses as well. They're also increasing.
Do we know whether that's the same thing as how many are actually operating?
Question.
I don't think we could answer that, to be honest, councillor. I don't know why somebody would have a licence and not use it, but we can only speak for how many licenses we've actually issued. We can't count how many people are actually working.
But because vehicle licenses are an annual licence, though, so whereas driver licenses are 3 years, so it would indicate that they are working. I would suggest, but obviously we can't sort of categorically prove that.
Thank you, Diane. Does that answer your question, Councillor Foster?
Well, I think it's as good an answer as I'm going to get.
Yeah, I think so. I think the annual, the fact that it's annually, I think that probably is a good indicator that it is sort of an accurate picture, or at least a reasonably accurate picture of what the situation is. Councillor Forster.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Fulsham.
Thank you, Jack. No, I see where you're looking. Before I get to my main point, I wanted to observe that as I've been working quite closely on several major consultations over the last few months, to see an 80% awareness of the consultation going on is quite exceptional, and shows a degree of engagement that I'd give my back teeth for in lots of stuff we've been doing. But my point is actually about the Guildford method. From what I've read in the papers, it seems that it is yes, it's a structured method for coming up with a set of fares, but it also seems to be quite widely used. And has actually been through judicial review and a court process, which found in its favour. I wonder if officers could outline just how extensively it is used, because I think that if we have a chance to use something that is extensively adopted, we'd have to have very exceptional circumstances to go against it. I think that would put us in a more risky position.
Diane?
Laura, do you have those figures to hand?
I don't have them to hand. No, sorry, I'd have to go away and check that.
We did inquire at Guildford at the time when we were doing this, and they did provide a list of quite a long list of authorities that have got that have adopted this process as well. But I can dig that out and provide that to you at a later.
Thank you. That's good enough reassurance for me.
Councillor Cole.
Thank you. Just picking up on Councillor Fawcett's point, Dan, you mentioned that there's an increase in private hire licenses. Is that correct? Did I hear that correctly?
It's hackney carriages have increased. Private hire have remained relatively stable. There's only been an increase in number of 3 additional vehicles in the last 18 months, whereas hackney carriages have increased quite considerably.
They've increased over the last 18 months.
Yes, that's it. Well, I'm using the 18 months because that's when the current tariff was introduced. And obviously the tariff only applies to hackney carriages and not private hire vehicles.
Okay. Thank you for that, but I have a further question. So in terms of using the Guildford formula, do we know what the consequences are if we were to not use that to the authority? What are the risks? Councillor Fulsham mentioned about there may be risks to the authority. Is that the case, or what are they basically?
Well, I guess it was what the other alternative would be if we were to just. I mean, one option would be not to have a tariff at all, which would mean that there's obviously drivers are open, their vehicles are open to charge what they wish. So members of the public wouldn't necessarily be safeguarded in terms of not knowing how much they're going to have to pay for journeys. I think the Guildford method does provide a robust. We can justify why we're using the figures. I think any other method would be it would be could be viewed as being subjective. So we'd need to carefully consider what information we're taking into account if we were going to come up with our own sort of independent formula.
I totally agree, and I'm not suggesting we don't use that. However, I would suggest that, I mean, dependent on the local environment and market.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be wrong. So the Guildford method, I think, adopted as a method of calculating it. And I wouldn't want to say at the suggestion of the taxi drivers, but I thought that we had the push that was the preferred method, and that's why we've adopted it.
Sorry, Chair, if I can make a comment. I just, in the pre-consultation meeting, my understanding was that was agreed with the SVTDA, Mr. Atherton and Mr. Hillock at the time, that the Guildford model. And I think there, we have to be clear in our language here. Yeah. A model is used as a basis to represent your community needs. This is what we're debating today.
Yeah.
And it's not a cookie cutter.
Yeah.
But it is a model.
Yeah. Could you have anything to add?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
Can I just?
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. I just wanted to clarify that because that's so. It's about that is why we're using the Guildford model. Thank you for the correction. And that's why we're going with it, because it was the agreement of Cabinet earlier, but that's what we were going to do based on pressure from sort of what was being suggested. So if you want to add anything, please do.
I suppose my concern would be that actually, in doing so, are we actually damaging a local market in a way that actually is detrimental to our local residents and well, the sense of our private licensed vehicles, not company vehicles, they're not under the same kind of ruling, therefore they don't have the same restrictions, and therefore they can operate freely without any such restrictions. And I'm not sure that it would be the right thing to do, if I'm honest, to be able to kind of put businesses out of business. And I appreciate it's a very emotive subject.
No, but I think this is so we can keep on going around in circles. And I'm sorry, Councillor Crawford, because I know you put your hands up. But we decided to go for the Guildford model because of the suggestion from carriage drivers. So I'm confused now that it's coming up that this is not what we wanted to do. I'm going to go to Councillor Crawford because he's been very patient. Councillor Crawford.
So the proposals that we've got will mean that we're the 13th highest authority in the country. And other things being equal, it does beg the question, therefore, that those ones that are cheaper than are less expensive than the tariffs that we're proposing, how do the taxi drivers survive there? And perhaps the argument is, well, the Vale is an relatively expensive place to live, compared with those authorities that are able to charge less. And I don't think the taxi drivers help themselves by trying to compare Henley and frankly, to use Henley as the example in the Vale and South of cost of living, because Henley is not representative, apart from the fact it's not even in the Vale. I don't think it's necessarily representative of reality, particularly when you come to housing costs. So we will be charging 13th highest. It's not clear to me that there are any extraordinary extenuating circumstances that means that we should be even higher than that. Particularly when you look at the top three being London Heathrow Airport, Luton Airport, and TfL London. However, I've just got a real problem with the whole notion of this, to be honest. You know, we don't legislate how much a supermarket can sell a tin of beans for. And this is, to my knowledge, it's possibly the only area where we can tell the private sector how much to charge for their service or business. I can't think of any others. And we don't have to do it. It's not a requirement for us to do it. I don't know what the answer is to my quandary, really. But it would be interesting to know from officers if they know how many other authorities simply choose not to have a tariff, which is what I understand they're entitled to do if they wish.
I can answer that if it would assist. I believe there's 4 councils which don't charge a tariff at all, don't set a tariff, I should say. One of which I believe doesn't actually license any Hackney carriages at all. So in essence, 3 with Hackney carriages do not set the tariff. So 3 out of 350-ish. 145, I think. If that helps.
Can I just ask? It's sorry, it's a really, I think it's a really valid point, Councillor Crawford. But also I can see the benefit of it, of councils doing it, because you know, I was reading through the response, a lot of the comments in the consultation, which I actually found really useful from the respondents, because it actually gave such a good insight into the particulars around certain raises to do with the tariff. And where it was maybe considered too high, like the £1.50 for more than 4 example. But I really find the comments around the elderly community who use the taxis very valid, and perhaps it is beneficial for councils to set a tariff, because therefore it keeps rates at a level that is affordable for many of the community, whereby if it wasn't, we didn't have this, therefore the taxi tariffs may increase significantly and therefore be extremely unaffordable for elderly communities that might use the taxis and therefore not be able to use them anymore. So I guess I see both sides of the argument, but I do think you have a really valid point, Mr. Crawford, in whether we should or shouldn't do it, and like I see the validity of it in ensuring that it is competitive for those who need to afford it.
Councillor Fawcett.
Sorry, I've got another question, and my difficulty is that this one might be better answered, but we might get a better informed answer from one of the taxi drivers rather than our officers. But if I ask the question, assuming you have some discretion over that, if I ask the question and then you can decide how best to field it.
Okay.
So my question, I'm puzzling over why there was so few actual responses to the online consultation, because as far as I can see, it wasn't a technical issue, because quite a few people did respond, and we know that lots of people aren't opening emails. My question is what proportion of the Vale's taxi drivers are represented by the Southern Vale Taxi Driver Association? Did that association encourage its members to respond to the survey? And if so, why weren't, if the position being put forward by the Southern Vale Taxi Driver Association is representative of a large number of taxi drivers, why didn't they respond and say no in the consultation? And you'll understand why that might be.
Mr. Hullock, would you like to answer that? But I would ask you to answer those questions specifically.
We have tried to communicate to associated members and non-associated members to get them to respond. The unfortunate thing is that the number of Hackney drivers that have a Hackney private hire license drive for the private hire companies, not for it. So they don't bother. They're not interested in filling any of those things out. They look at it, yeah, fine, and put it aside. They don't fill it through. And we're trying to get them to do that. It's difficult. It's like anything. To persuade somebody to do something, unless it's in their interest, they won't do it. We are representative of the trade. We do have a large membership, and it's growing. And we're trying to get the more. So when we come to you, we are representing the trade because that is what we get from the trade. Hopefully that understands it more. And so with regards to the communication, you've sent out these emails. We've had a lot of drivers saying we haven't received it. You say you sent it out on the newsletter.
Okay.
I have to put my hand up
Mr.
and say I've
Mr.
not
Hallett,
received the newsletter.
You're not answering the questions as asked. Could you clarify how many members you have and how many, what percentage? Like, I think that's what you asked, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Councillor, what percentage?
We've got over 150 members, and I would say that it's split about 60-40 towards south in that area. It's got evenly split, but it is mainly 60-40 to south.
Answer, that's enough of an answer.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask officers for any further input?
No, I think that was Neil's question.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. So, does anybody have any further comments?
Yes. No, not allowed.
No.
Anyway, please. You haven't asked the most important question of the licensing members. How many of the licensed vehicles in South and Vale, and it's known to the licensing team, operate under private hire with 001 on royal taxes rather than getting Oxford City licenses? They do not respond because they do not work and they do not charge the tariff that we are forced to charge.
Sorry.
They know that, and they know that's why the numbers are low, and it's distorting your decision. These people don't actually work in your towns, in your borough. They work in Oxford City Centre for 001 and Royal. They will not respond to
Mr.
this.
Atherton, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to take it to recommendations if nobody has any further
rubbish
comments. So, could you do me a favour, Steve, of reading out the recommendations?
Yeah, Chair. So recommendations on page 21 of your agenda. Cabinet is recommended to A, consider the results of the consultation and Appendix D, adopt the proposed maximum Hackney carriage fares of Appendix G with effect from 20th of April, and C, subject to approving B above, agree that the tariff is reviewed annually using the Guildford model.
So, you've heard those three recommendations. With the third recommendation, again, is stressing that it's an annual review. It's and it's a Guildford model as we agreed to previously. So with those three recommendations, are you happy to take them all as one? Yeah. And I would ask everybody, are they happy to agree to these recommendations or not? I mean, you can hands up.
The chair. So, so I will agree with the recommendations, but only because I'm unaware of any other method of calculating a just fare, and the Guildford model has been demonstrated to be fair and transparent. It's gone through the court process, and therefore my judgment therefore is that is a balanced way of coming up with a fare. I absolutely have heard what you've said. I've heard what both of the public have said, and it's a hard decision, but without having any other method that I think is effectively independent I'm not sure that I could vote against this, so I am in favour of these recommendations.
If I could, just one last question. I'm not seeing in the detail of the papers here an impact analysis of what that will mean. Have I missed that, or is that actually contained therein? As in, if we do make those changes, obviously it is with immediate effect. Do we know what the impact on the sector will be?
What do you mean by the impact?
Well, exactly that. I mean, what will the impact of
I
those
think-
Well, we
changes?
won't know. It's
Yeah.
down to individual businesses to make a
Yeah.
decision. We've
And-
heard one
Except what we charge. Yeah.
We've heard one business say that they would be struggling to pass on those, well, they can't pass on those fees and run their business, but that, I mean, that we can't go and consult with every single one of them now and say.
Because we've been through the process, and I think this is what we've.
That's the point of the consultation,
Yeah.
really.
I recognise
Yeah.
that, but I mean,
Well, I mean, the Guildford process was the one that was suggested, as far as I understand, at the encouragement of the Hackney carriage drivers. So we took that into our consideration earlier. We have consulted on it, and I think we've consulted on it as best as we possibly can. Recognizing that a consultation is not a negotiation as such, but a chance, an opportunity for drivers in this and public to say whether they agree or they disagree, or whether, I mean, presumably we would be in a different situation now had 100% of the drivers come back to us and said, no, this is not reasonable. But we haven't had that situation, so we can only work on what we've got in front of us. Now, I would like to see, regardless of what happens today, next year, as it's an annual review, that drivers, and this is no disrespect to officers, because I know that they did work as hard as they can, but drivers get back to us and actually show us what they're feeling, what they want. I mean, with the greatest respect to Mr. Atherton and Mr. Hullett, they're the only two people that have come to speak to us and done repeatedly, and we appreciate that you have come to speak to us, but with the evidence in front of us of the consultation, that's all we've got to go on. So I'm really, I'm struggling to see how we can't rewind it from this point. We can only go forward. We are where we are, and sadly we don't have what Mr. Hullett and Mr. Atherton are saying in front of us. That, and if we'd had that, maybe we'd be in a different position right now. But I don't think. I hope that members should agree with me on that. That this is, we are where we are, and this is the evidence in front of us. And with the greatest respect, we've got to this point. I think in a logical process of listening to taxi drivers, hearing what they had to say, suggesting the Guildford model, and now with the consultation in front of us, this is what we have to adopt. And hopefully, as I said, next year, annual review, we will hear more from taxi drivers right across the district, and perhaps get a more accurate picture if indeed Mr. Hullett and Mr. Atherton are saying what they have told us repeatedly. That, and if we could get that reflected in the results of the consultation, then I think we could be in a different position next year. But at the moment, I don't think there's any. Well, personally, I feel as though I have to agree these recommendations. It's a difficult decision, and I don't like being in this position, but I think it is. But like Councillor Edwards said, I think it is a responsible council does set a tariff, because we do have to, elderly residents, disabled residents, limited mobility. We do have to keep those people in mind when we're doing this, and we would want to protect them as well. Anyway, I'm rambling. I feel I am. It is a very difficult decision, but I think we need to make one.
If I was you, can I ask Vivian something?
Yeah.
Vivian?
Yes, Mark.
Can you confirm for the members, given the question, if members do not approve it today, do the existing lower tariffs stay in place?
The existing tariffs remain, as far as I'm aware.
So the lower tariffs will remain in force. So you're choosing to leave the lower ones in force.
Okay. Okay. Well, then I think that is the clear. The clarification there. So,
or you could implement the tariff that the association is requesting. There is that third option.
No, it isn't on the table today, I'm afraid, Mr. Hullett.
Should be. What are you voting on then? It was put forward to committee by the association. It should be there for your use.
Can we have a vote? We've got lots on this agenda.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank
to
you.
crack on.
Why is it not on the table?
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to ask for do members agree to these recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed. Any abstentions? One abstention. Is that noted? Councillor Crawford.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, appreciate Mr. Hullett and Mr. Atherton coming to speak. And as I said, I hope the consultation next year gets more responses. Okay, on to item number 9. So this is the S106 request. So just and it's being introduced by Councillor Paul. So it's the S106 Milton. This 106 request for Milton Community and Sports Limited. New community hall with sporting facilities, Pontash Lane, Milton. And I do believe there's been some recent updates on this, but how do we want to deal with this?
Call to present to start with.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll have Councillor Cole introducing, and then we can discuss it.
So I am delighted to be bringing this here to Cabinet today. Just to give you some background, Milton Community and Sports Limited proposed to build a new community hall with sporting facilities at Milton United Football Club's current ground at Potash Lane, and that's located in the Milton Heights area of the parish of Milton, replacing the current rundown facility. The organisation is an entity, so that's Milton Community and Sports Limited. So this is an entity set up to promote, encourage and support community and amateur sport. So the Section 106 funding totalling £876,572.22 from 3 developments in the parish of Milton have been identified to support the delivery of the proposed 900,000 facility, with the parish council funding the shortfall. Evidence of which has been provided, which also confirms that the parish have reserved contingency funding of 9.1% of the project costs. So the organisation has also provided a business plan with analysis of current participation and usage to demonstrate that the new facility will be financially viable. The organisation have previously been awarded £18,255.50 of Section 106 funding as part of a separate application towards the cost of professional fees, which has been used to bring forward a planning application for the facility, for which the consultation period ended on 20th of March, with a target date of decision of 16th of April. Almost done. It is important to note that an essential requirement for approval of Section 106 funding is for planning permission, if required, to be in place before the funding can be agreed. As approval of this level of funding requires a full council decision to create the budget, it is planned that the funding decision, if recommended by Cabinet, will be taken to May Council for determination, but this can only happen if planning permission is in place prior to that meeting. Should that not be the case, this will carry forward to a future council meeting. There is an impetus, however, to progress this project, as the adult men's first team currently participate at a semi-professional level of football. But a recent Football Association inspection of the current facilities has deemed these to be inadequate in not meeting the standards for this level. I think a point made by Councillor James earlier on. There is a risk that the club will be relegated into a lower league, which would have a major effect throughout the whole club. The club are in negotiations to temporarily play their home matches at an FA compliant ground. There is, however, a higher cost to this, which, alongside loss of matchday revenue, is unsustainable in the longer term. Should funding be approved, a legal agreement will be put in place to govern the release of funds to limit the liability to the council and also allow us to have oversight of the delivery of the project as this progresses. In summary, this new community hall with sporting facilities, fully supported by the ward member, as we heard earlier, and parish council, will provide increased usage in comparison to the existing structure and provide modern facilities which will encourage a wider diverse group of participants. The new facility will allow Milton United Football Club to thrive and provide sporting opportunities fit for the expanding parish, and is fully suitable use of the Section 106 funding proposed for this project. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Now, obviously, we had Councillor James, who is still online, talking about this item earlier. And there is some, Mark's here. Fantastic. Thank you. I was going to say news just in, but Mark, can you explain the situation as it stands now, please?
I can indeed. Thank you, Chair. Over the past week, we've had further correspondence about this particular project, not ultimately suggesting any amendments to the proposed use of funding on the project itself. The discussion on this is sort of leading to the funding being awarded to the parish council as landowner rather than the entity set up to bring the project forward. That would ultimately lead to a change to the recommendations as set out above. However, we would propose that we put an alternative set of recommendations forward, or alternatively a delegation to officers to consider, should this be approved, to the process for determining who the funds are released to, whichever the committee feels is the most appropriate way for us to take that forward. But in essence, everything's the same. It would just be a release of funds to the parish council rather than the club entity instead.
Thank you, Mark. Now, obviously, that slightly different light on the situation, and I would probably ask you, Steve, to if it's possible for you to suggest a different
mechanism,
words, or
so it can be sorted out who those funds should be payable to. We're suggesting that Cabinet delegates authority to make the recommendation to full council, delegates the authority to the head of finance in consultation with the Cabinet member, Councillor Supporn. And the recommendation will be made by the head of finance in consultation with Councillor Supporn to council if they are content with the arrangements.
I think that sounds sensible. Does anybody have any comments on just that variation?
So effectively, we've been asked, I think, in principle, to approve this section 106 money, and then we're going to leave it to the head of finance to determine who we release it to based on. And can I just ask what this is an educated quiz for me. I understand the difference between the parish and the entity. Can I just understand what the significance of trying to change to giving the money to the landowner rather than the entity putting the project in place?
It will be the parish council's landowner and the organisation actually contracting and bring forward the works. It makes more sense, especially in terms of releasing public funds to another public body in order to be able to do so. So that's the rationale behind this. It's not going to change anything fundamentally about the project itself.
So in essence, it's about giving it to a public body, but versus I'm probably used the wrong term, but a company. Is that right?
That's my understanding of the request for the change. I've got Dave Cookson with me, who's been more directly linked with the parish and the entities and the club. Sorry, is there anything else to add to that, or is it purely down to that, Dave?
That's correct. Yeah. Obviously, the entity that we're talking about, the parish council are a part of as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. That's good clarification, and I appreciate you putting this into the consideration sort of at short notice. So thank you for this. Does anybody have any comments on this, Councillor Fawcett?
Yeah, I mean, just very briefly, I think this is a great project. Milton Heights is a small community growing rapidly, has never had particularly good community facilities. And I think this is a great step forward. Obviously, that was recognised when these various Section 106 agreements were negotiated. But I think this is a really good plan, and it brings the sort of standard of sports and community facilities to the community that probably should have been there some time ago. And it's great, I think, if we can be part of making sure that happens. And on a purely personally, I think I slightly prefer the idea of giving the money to the parish council than to a company. I know it's the right kind of company for this kind of thing, but that seems to me to be a certainly sensible thing for us to look at.
Yeah.
So I'm fully supportive of this.
No, I agree. Councillor Edwards.
Just to say, I enjoyed Councillor Cole's overview, and particularly around the fact that it's a semi-professional football team as well, and isn't that a really great thing to be able to have when so much emphasis is placed on our other professional teams?
Yeah,
very close. So I think it's a fantastic result.
Good point. Yeah. No, and as Councillor James indicated for Milton, I think it is really important that we have these facilities locally, and that it's not just about football. It's important, but that it is for all of those other things. And Councillor James suggested Nitinata, of which I am a member of my local one, so I do appreciate that. So I think, Councillor Bulsham.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very supportive of this scheme coming through. I do see that there is a clear need for these facilities in an area of Vale that doesn't as yet have sufficient provision. It's good to get facilities up to the standards required by the national sporting body, in this case the FA. We are at the moment in the middle of leisure needs assessment and playing pitch strategy consultation, and it's clear that this type of activity needs to go on, and we shouldn't just wait for the results of this consultation. We need to be progressing the schemes as they come through, so there isn't a bottleneck. I think it is great to see, particularly the parish council taking a lead on this and providing something that is at the standards that the national body wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Coleman.
So I'm not going to repeat everything I've just heard, but I am supportive of it. Can I just ask a question on paragraph 23, the risks, which I'll read out. Section 106 funding could be at risk if the building contract fails or the building contractor becomes insolvent. The funding agreement will limit the district council's liability in its release of funding towards the project, which obviously is a mitigation. So twofold. First one is, do I interpret that to say that if we don't commit the Section 106 money to this, we will then be outside of the scope, I think, of 10 years for the use of Section 106 funding, and therefore it can't be used for another project? Second part is, by if we pay the money to the parish council versus the entity, does that to some degree mitigate this risk? Because clearly the parish council, I don't think the parish council can go bankrupt. So those are the two questions. One, if we fail to use it on this project, do we actually lose it? And the second one, are we slightly better in a better position going to the parish council than the entity?
I can take that one. Yes, in relation to point one, absolutely. These funds are very much secured with this type of project in mind. I think if this project doesn't progress, it's probably unlikely that a similar sort of project will come forward. This very much fits the bill for the specific use criteria of the Section 106. And in relation to the second point, again, yes, I think that allocating the funds to the parish council, we believe, would be a solution which is less likely to see any issues in release of those funds. So again, will help reduce the risks in those projects not coming forward. In relation to how we mitigate the risk, we essentially release the funds in accordance with the build programme, so we can assist with the parish council and the sports club in monitoring the delivery of that to make sure it's on track to not be overspent based on the proposed build programme. So that will all be sort of catered for as part of the funding agreement put in place.
Thanks very much. That's very clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just ask a question. So this has been kind of quite a late kind of flurry of activity that has happened. Is there any trigger for this at all in terms of the change of payment to the entity as opposed to or to the parish council? What's the?
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
If you go with the proposed delegation, you probably shouldn't be discussing it more because you're putting the officer in an awkward place because the delegation proposed isn't to Mark. And by making that recommendation, you're agreeing not to take a view on who should receive the money.
Thank you. That's
it's very handy.
Is that all right? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Totally fine. I'm just curious, but I can switch up curiosity.
Yes. Thank you. That is setting us on the straight and narrow. So if there aren't any further questions or comments, I would ask Steve, or is that possible for you to read out what you think is the correct wording that we would like to go with?
So I'm looking at page 62. That Cabinet delegates authority to the head of finance in consultation with the Cabinet member for infrastructure, Councillor Sue Call, to create a budget. To recommend council to create the budget towards the new community hall sports facilities in Melton from the accumulated Section 106, and then authorise the head of finance the 2 bullet points on page 23 with parish council being inserted in place of MCSL.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so is that clear, everyone?
Yes.
Yeah. And are we happy to agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree. Thank you very much. So, moving on again. So item number 10, Didcot Garden Town Delivery Plan Update and Next Steps, and I believe that is also being introduced by Councillor Cole. Thank you very much.
So with great pleasure, I'm bringing before the Cabinet today the Didcot Garden Town wayfinding strategy and also a progress update around the actual delivery plan. And so what we wanted to say basically is since the revision of the programme's outputs was approved by Cabinet in June 2022, we have completion of 3 projects and we can show significant progress towards a number of other projects as well. So the Didcot Garden Town boundary includes wards in both Vale and Whitehorse and South Oxfordshire districts. And the programme's delivery approach is a joint priority for both councils, working collectively with a host of partners to advance priorities. It is worth noting that the Didcot Garden Town Advisory Board, with representation of key stakeholders, receive regular updates about the delivery plan at their meetings. This paper also seeks approval from Cabinet for two proposed strategies. So we have the Didcot wayfinding and the green infrastructure strategies. Their development marks an important milestone for the programme, positively progressing visionary objectives into informed improvement schemes. The wayfinding strategy examines the destinations and connectivity within the expanding communities of Didcot Garden Town, looking at how we can complement the experience of residents, commuters and visitors and encourage active travel. The green infrastructure strategy examines gaps in provision and identifies improved public realm projects for health and wellbeing benefits, as well as biodiversity net gain. Both strategies are aligned with outcomes from the approved Didcot LC WIP. They have also been considered and received support from the Didcot Garden Town Advisory Board at their recent meetings. Subject to Cabinet approval, the strategies will direct work plans for officers in the upcoming financial year to expedite recommendations into capital projects to reap physical benefits for stakeholders on the ground. Supported by budget held by South Oxfordshire District Council, funding will be allocated by South to implement the wayfinding recommendations throughout the town in its entirety, alongside proposed implementation of 4 short-term green infrastructure projects across Didcot within a 5-year timeframe. Some of the proposed project outputs are to create biodiversity corridors in central Didcot wherever possible. At Lady Grove Spine, that is the area under the pylons, to enhance biodiversity, make comfortable spaces for women and girls, and increase multifunctionality with opportunities for play, food growing, and public art. In the southwest, in partnership with the town council and developers, to enhance the perimeter route from Mulberry Nature Reserve through Great Western Park and into Vale Park. There will also be further work by officers to explore and scope possible projects in the northwest of Didcot to bring forward to Cabinet for approval at a later date. Officers will also continue to explore funding or other opportunities that may arise to support the delivery of projects within the programme. The recommendations are that Cabinet notes progress against the approved Didcot Garden Town Delivery Plan, that Cabinet approved the Didcot Wayfinding Strategy in Appendix 3, and that Cabinet approved the Didcot Green Infrastructure Strategy in Appendix 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. I've been to many briefings and discussions on this, and I feel very confident that we are moving forward with this project. I think there has been frustration in the past that there hasn't been any action seen, and now I think we're getting to a stage where there is. And obviously I feel a bit when I go to these meetings like the junior partner, because I always feel that South is the biggest stakeholder in this, but I'm really proud of the efforts that officers have gone to get this to this stage, and I think some of the reports here are really good. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Sorry, I was just I didn't realise how much it was raining.
Was staring at the clock.
The rain. I thought it wasn't supposed to rain. So I hope I've got an umbrella. Councillor.
Yeah, in the report, and Councillor Cole mentioned it as well. There's a statement that says officers will continue to seek external funding to support the delivery plan programme. That sort of sounds to me like there isn't enough money to deliver the whole of the plan programme. And if that is the case, I just want to get an understanding of what dangers there may be, what might fall out, and if there's not sufficient money to deliver everything, how we're prioritising those parts of the plan that we want to deliver with the money that we definitely know that we do have, and also how successful have we been at all in seeking and actually finding additional funding.
Thank you. I think who is the best person to
Who's on the dot stage?
Yeah, that's on the dot.
Charlotte Cottingham.
Yeah,
Nicola
Charlotte, I mean, Sue can tell you a little bit about the Garden Town Board, I think, because you sit on it, Sue, don't you, Sue?
I think I do. Yeah.
Which does the prioritisation. So do you want to go first, and then Charlotte can support you with Nikki?
Absolutely. So basically, given the funding that we have, obviously the majority of which is held by South, but we also have funding from various external sources, Oxfordshire and others as well. Every project that we have brought forward has always been prioritised based on what funding and resources, in addition to funding, as in manpower, we are able to apply to that to ensure that it's given its most appropriate support and that we are able to deliver it in the time frame that we have. So the kind of a lot of the advisory board conversations revolve around the reprioritization of projects dependent on the resources available. And sometimes they do have to be put back and sometimes they can be prioritised and brought forward. But effectively, if we give something the go-ahead, it only actually gets, that particular project will only get go-ahead based on the effective resourcing being there in place before we go for it and say, yes, we're going to put that forward. In terms of the strategy, obviously, these are strategic kind of objectives that we're trying to achieve. And it's always a good aspiration to have these things in place. So we know what we would like, where we'd like to get to at the end of that. But subsequently, we are also often in the process of applying for grants and additional monies, various different other bodies all the time. So that's kind of where we are with regards to the advisory board. But I'll hand over to Charlotte.
Good morning. My name's been mentioned, but I think I'd like to actually hand over to Nikki Wire, the Garden Communities team leader.
No, so agree with Sue's points, but in terms of funding, we're part of the National Garden Communities Programme, which annually we get to bid funding to advance priorities. So that's our main sort of stream of income, but we're constantly sort of scanning the horizon for other external funding opportunities, one for government, but also opportunities presented by the growing communities within Dovecot through SIL and Section 106. Anything you want to add to that?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Vale.
Yeah, very comfortable.
Thank you, Jeff. I wanted to highlight the particularly the wayfinding strategy. I was very pleased to sort of dive into it in some detail yesterday when I was reading through papers, and particularly its focus on delivering accessible and legible signage. It's actually something that you hear more often in casework than many other issues, is that the clutter of signs. I know that residents with who are either neurodiverse or have problems with dyslexia will find a clutter of signage with different typefaces and different emphases really hard to manage. And I know this report has dived into that with quite some detail. I'm very grateful to officers and those who prepared it for that. And I do like the theming in terms of pattern backgrounds. I know that officers will work hard to make sure that theming doesn't distract from making these signs the most accessible that they could be. So thank you, officers. It was a very refreshing and good piece of work to read.
I think Councillor Fawcett and then Councillor Coleman.
Yeah, I was just going to make a general point. I think it is great that we're now seeing some real progress in delivery. It absolutely is the case that for a lot of people living in Didcot and surrounding areas, this project has been going for a very, very long time and was launched a long time ago with a lot of big promises. And they haven't seen the level of delivery against those promises that they ought to have done. So it is really good that we are now managing to start to deliver some tangible things, as with all these kind of schemes. That the money was probably never, the overall amount of money needed was probably never there to deliver the way it was sold initially. But it is good to see that our team are doing a good job now of starting to pull in resource to support at least some tangible things that are going to make a difference to people on the ground. And I think our job is to concentrate on that realistic and practical approach to delivering stuff, and not get into the habit of promising the earth when what we're going to deliver is an allotment.
And I'd like to thank officers because it's a very thorough discussion of the activity now as we see it, and very well presented as well. So I appreciate that. Now I was going to go back to Steve if possible. I believe there were some recommendations on this piece.
Yes, Chair, there were recommendations from the Joint Scrutiny Committee. And the committee suggested that members endorse the use of metric measurements on signage, suggest that the signage had reflectors, lighting and braille factored into design, asked whether the Didcot Garden Town Advisory Board members could look into large-scale country nature parks, and then on rain gardens, asked if this project could be accelerated. They also suggested that the timetable for active travel projects could be further informed by the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan.
Thank you. And I know we've all read these and taken these into consideration, and I'm sure officers have noted them as well. So with that in mind, does anybody have any further questions or comments?
Still.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Coleman. You need to be sitting there, then I can.
I need longer arms.
Sorry, Councillor Coleman, go on.
So really, it's an observation and hopefully a bit of a request. So, in the work that we're doing, well, actually within the current local plan, but also the work in the joint local plan that we're doing some really good work on at the moment. One of the significant benefits I see of the JLP is the protection of green spaces and the identification of green spaces, which, if I look at the green infrastructure strategy that's been articulated here, this is exactly the sort of thing that we should be, shouting from the rooftops to say, we've identified this as an issue. I think for the people of Didcot, and I know that Councillor Fawcett's got more experience in terms of how long we've been working on this, but I see this as being as housing developments increase, that there is a risk that we lose those things that just make us feel better, and the well-being, and hopefully Councillor Peaknill's still on. The health and well-being that we are responsible for trying to support for our residents. This is exactly the sort of project that I think meets those requirements. So here's then the request that we do make progress as fast as possible. We ensure that we listen to the locals as this evolves, and I understand it is an evolution. It's not going to be all delivered in one go, and we emphasise where we can priorities to the green spaces, to the benefit of the local residents. So it doesn't really require an answer, because I guess that's inevitably what the officers are there to do. But I need to express that as a member who cares about the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. I will try and answer you more quickly. So now I'm assuming that we've had the scrutiny recommendation and no further comments. Is everybody happy to agree with the recommendations?
Yes,
Agree. Thank you. And thank you, Charlotte and Nikki. It's great. Thank you for being here to answer our questions. I was going to ask, if possible, if we could just pause. It's been quite a long meeting so far, but pause for it to come to break, because I need to jump up and around and all that sort of stuff, because otherwise I'll just be staring at the window.